One of my real heroes is a woman named Laura Flanders. She did the Laura Flanders show on a lot of Air America stations. She goes way, way back and was one of the great media reformers working with fairness and accuracy and reporting over the years, a wonderful group. She now is the host of Grit TV, the creator of Grit TV, which is the single best interview and journalism quality show on television, even though it's not at every station it should be. Grit TV, fabulous stuff. And best of all, Laura is the author of a great new book entitled, and I love the title, At the Tea Party, The Wingnuts, Whack Jobs, and Whitey Whiteness of the New Republican Right. And why we should take it seriously. I know we probably should take it seriously, but I do know one thing. I always take Laura Flanders seriously. Please welcome her.
Woohoo! What? What, no Whitman? I don't get to have the Whitman backup chorus here? That was fun, wasn't it? Thanks, Whitman. There's a really great seat for you right out there. You never want to compete with kids or animals, I think, on a stage. It's so fantastic to be back here in Madison and here in a town that has a fantastic cable station. Can we hear it for your local community cable station? Can we hear it for WORT? I don't know where you would be, but I know where I would be if it wasn't for the independent media in this town and around the country, and that wouldn't be very far. I would be sitting at home being frustrated, unable to get anybody to publish anything or broadcast anything. If we didn't have our independent media, we wouldn't know each other. Wouldn't that be sad? So if you haven't sent in your subscription yet or done your best to work for the survival of your community cable station, do it as soon as you get home. All right, so I was appreciating John Nichols reminding us where we were because I don't quite think I understand what's going on here in Wisconsin. I have been hearing rumors that a guy who I think of as something of a hero in these times is fighting a tough fight. I've heard that a guy that is for campaign finance reform, who was against the Iraq War, a guy who was the only guy to stand up, or woman to stand up in the Senate against the Patriot Act. I've been hearing that a guy who was against NAFTA from before, when Rahm Emanuel was just really getting his skates on in favor of NAFTA, a guy who was against NAFTA, who was against DOMA, who was against the bank bailout, and a guy who was against and voted against the confirmation of Timothy Geithner. I've been hearing that that guy is fighting a tough fight. So maybe we should just, I'm sure he wouldn't mind. Would you mind? I don't think he'd mind if we just renamed it for this one time, Fighting Rustfest. Would that be okay? And I'm really glad I'm up on the stage here with a lot of smart guys tonight. They are all guys. But anyway, a lot of smart guys, because I'm really having a hard time making sense of politics. With rumors like that, there are also rumors that the likely opponent of that aforementioned guy is a Moneybags millionaire who said, and hoped to get credit for saying this, said that he sold BP stock in order to run for the Senate. Not because there was blood on it, not because there was oil on it, not that because there was the dead ecosystem of entire Gulf of Mexico on that BP stock, but because he wanted to run against Russ Feingold. And And that this man, this Moneybags Millionaire, has been endorsed by Jim DeMint of Americans for Prosperity fame. And just in case you forget where you've heard that Americans for Prosperity thing, they're the ones who brought you the Tea Partiers. And they're the ones who say that they're the People's Party, but they're for ending Social Security, ending Medicare, opposing internet freedom, opposing funding for public education. They stood up against state funding that was going to keep 300,000 public teachers employed. They're against Wall Street reform because that would be onerous on the banks, but they're okay with keeping all the burdens on mortgage owners, even those whose mortgages are underwater. That those people, who are, most of them middle-aged with kids in public school, they use the internet, and they have mortgages, that those people are running against fighting Russ Feingold? I mean, maybe there's a reason that I'm foggy about the news. It could be that every time I turn on the TV in the last week, some character from Gainesville has been on there. Terry Jones, I thought, was a character in Monty Python. And in fact, I really am doing my best to get the real Terry Jones to respond to that other one on Grit TV this week, so keep an eye out. There's only one reason that story took off. There's only one reason that story from Gainesville took off this week, and that's because, not because of one nut in Florida, but because of a media narrative in Washington. And it's a narrative we should be very used to by now, because it's coming to us from people who would like to continue the Bush administration by other means. Remember the era of Bush where the guy couldn't get in front of a camera without saying 9/11, 9/11, 9/11? That was the era of fear and fright, and we must fight. And the same people that were behind Bush are behind this message today. And that's what was the message coming out of Florida, was less that there was going to be a burning of the Qurans, but more that there was going to be a backlash because, well, we have the army of radical Islam at the borders about to invade and impose Sharia law on us all. This is the story that's been coming to us from those who have been in office backing the Bush way of doing things since before Bush was in office and are still there today. And if they're not in office, they're manning and womaning the media and the banks that are bankrolling it and the corporations that are bankrolling this message. And these are the folks who would have you focus on those who are threatening you, the fear, fright, and fight message, while your pocket is being pickpocketed by the interests that are bankrolling them. These are the people who had you believe that it was a 3-year little economic cycle that we've just been through, instead of a 30-year, 3-decade crisis of transferring wealth from the poor, from the working man and woman to the owners. These are the people that would have you talk about fear, fright, and we must fight because they don't want you to remember that we have 14 million unemployed in this country and underemployed, while $1.8 trillion in private assets are sitting unused by folks who want more but won't give anything back. And when I was driving here, when I was being driven by the wonderful folks at Union Cab Company, I asked Fred Shepherds, was his name. I asked him about, what do you think would be useful to talk about? We're all going to be having the same general gloomy view of life. And he said, well, why don't you talk about neo-something or other, neo-syndicatism. And he said it was liberated zones. Liberated zones, how maybe we may not be able to take over the whole world or even our whole government today, but we can create liberated zones, and the Union Cab Company is one. And I really think that Bob La Follette created a liberated zone of a kind here in Wisconsin in his time. And I think that A lot of the folks here work in independent media that's a kind of liberated zone inside the media all about money sphere. We're actually about people and communication and democracy, a little liberated zone, although we struggle. Have you paid your subscriptions to your local community radio? Did I mention that? You got to put your money where your mouth is. We have a liberated zone where we try to think a little bit more critically and creatively and have a little fun while we're doing it and remind people they can have an effect. But we need the liberated zone of Wisconsin, and we need the little liberated zone that's represented by Russ Feingold in our politics right now, because it's not just... It is not just the nuts in Florida. It is not just the nuts in Gainesville who are trying to terrify us into not paying attention to our neighbor and the condition of our neighbors. It's not just the nuts in Gainesville, it's the nuts in Washington. And tomorrow, while many in the media would have you be focusing on this little Monty Python-esque character and what he will or will not do, and could he, next time he gives a press conference, could the press please not come? Somebody asked me on MSNBC yesterday, should the president call the pastor? I said, no, the president should call Fox News and tell them to stop covering the guy. Although I will say, there would be something to be said for him doing his Quran burning, because I believe there would be 5 people standing with him and 5,000 people standing behind him protesting, and you would actually get a picture of America. But he's not the only one. Newt Gingrich. Right, you know what I was going to say. Tomorrow is launching something called, a new DVD called America at Risk. And it comes, good, that's the right reaction. It comes from the same people, Citizens United, the production company that brought us Citizens United. And I think it's actually a little sexist of us that we don't remember the original name for Citizens United. The company, they produced the Hillary the movie. And their original name, does anybody remember this, was Citizens United Not Timid. And you think what the acronym is. They're getting off easy that we don't remind them of that every time that name is mentioned. And it's really not a laughing matter. I mean, they should be held accountable for that approach to politics, that their name is on a Supreme Court decision that is destroying even further our democracy, against which, well, America at Risk is what's happening in Florida, only with better graphics and a slightly slicker set. It talks about this is the end of time. Islamic rule is on its way. Sharia law is at the border. And it's not narrated by Terry Jones. It's narrated by Newt Gingrich and his wife. So while they would have you focus, while the right would have you focus on the enemy over in another country or the enemy of another religion or another skin tone, we on the left sometimes would have us focus on the crazy kooks, the crazy people, the crazy loons here and there. They're not here and there. They're at the heart of the Republican Party, the Jim DeMints, the John Boehners. The Newt Gingriches, and we need the Russ Feingolds who will fight. Thanks.